Hello and welcome to this webinar on addressing diversity and wellness in the strengthened aged care quality standards. Today we're looking at Standard 3, Care and Service. My name is Dale Park and I'm the Director of Diversity Training and Consulting, and I'll be taking you through these series of webinars. These webinars are brought to you by the Sector Development Team in the Grampians region, SSD Connect Alliance and the Eastern Sector Development Team. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that this webinar is being recorded on the lands of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung peoples, and I pay respect to them as the traditional custodians of the land. I recognise it always has and always will be Aboriginal land. I honour the strength and resilience of First Nations peoples and communities and pay respects to all elders, past, present, and First Nations people watching this recording. In Standard 1, we went through some background around definitions of diversity and wellness, intersectionality, and how it relates to the aged care sector and why we need to be taking an intersectional approach, as well as background into the Royal Commission into Aged Care, the Aged Care Act being developed within a human rights-based approach, and the changes that were being highlighted for the strengthened aged care quality standards. If you missed Standard 1, I highly recommend that you go back and watch this introduction, as it really is quite key to setting the scene. So let's have a look at Standard 3, Care and Service. As with all standards within the aged care quality standards, there's an older person statement and a worker statement. So for Standard 3, the older people statement is, my care is based around who I am and what's important to me. And the worker statement is, I understand who I'm caring for and what is important to them. And this is exactly what assessors will be looking for when they come and meet with you and do your assessment against the strengthened standards. Standard 3 also describes how providers must deliver care and services that are tailored to the older person's needs and preferences, emphasizing the importance of effective assessment, planning, communication, and coordination. The standard highlights that family and carers play a crucial role in assisting or providing care and ensuring that care plans are regularly reviewed and adjusted based on the older person's changing needs and preferences. And I think it's really important that when we're talking about family, we're not limiting family to our own individual perspectives on what family is. For instance, there's chosen family. In some cultures and communities, family extends much broader than in other cultures. And so it's really up to the older person to tell us who are the people that are important to them and how do they want them involved in their care. These enhanced standards also require providers to engage older people in the planning and evaluation of care, ensuring their voices are heard and their choices respected. By fostering a culture of safety, inclusion, and quality, the strengthened standards are aiming to optimize the quality of life for older people, supporting them to live their best lives in a way that respects their autonomy and individual needs. We're now going to play a case study, and as you're watching it, what I'd like you to do is to think about how the requirements or the outcomes connected to Standard 3 are being met. Also consider what good practice you're seeing, whether that's person-centered care or good diversity and wellness approaches. Once the animation finishes, there'll be some questions and an opportunity for you to pause the video and reflect while you answer those questions. Glenn is meeting Merv and his daughter Jacinta to develop a care plan. Merv is living with some memory loss, but has been managing quite well until a recent accident with a mini chainsaw. He decided he no longer wanted the vines that grew all around his fence and cut his arm while removing them. Jacinta organised for the remaining vines to be removed, but thought that having garden maintenance would be good for her dad. As part of their discussion, Glenn finds out about Merv's interests and strengths, learns he was a Vietnam veteran, coached AFL, and had many community leadership positions. Merv also shares his vast knowledge of gardening and plants. Jacinta tells Glenn things can come up for Dad from being in the war. He can get frustrated and raise his voice. Glenn asks Merv, "Are there specific things that can upset you?" Merv says, "I don't want people trying to control what I do." They continue to talk, and Glenn finds out more about Merv, the support that Jacinta provides, and some of the situations where Merv can be triggered. With Merv's permission, Glenn documents these things in the care plan, along with advice from Jacinta. Glenn tells Merv this will help the support worker to respect your boundaries and know what you like and don't like. Merv says, "I don't want just anyone coming here. I've always been the one in charge." The three of them agree that Glenn can meet with the support worker prior to them starting to make sure he's comfortable. Glenn also suggests that they put in the care plan that at each visit, Merv will let the support worker know what he thinks needs to be done and what tasks he would like to do. Glenn informs the program coordinator about Merv's situation and the different things that can be triggering for him. They look at workers, their skills and experience, and find someone who has completed trauma awareness education and is a match with Merv's preferences. Prior to the first meeting, Glenn shares the care plan with Ryan, the support worker, including insights about his initial conversation with Merv. The meeting goes well, and Merv is happy for Ryan to come and assist with his garden maintenance. The program coordinator conducts an audit of all support workers and finds that no staff who had started in the last 2 years have completed trauma awareness education. She increases the number of sessions she was planning and updates the induction process to make this mandatory training with yearly refreshers. So the first question I'd really like you to consider is, how are the outcomes of Standard 3 evidenced in the practices and the interventions of Glenn and the program coordinator? Question 2. How did Glenn's approach to delivering Merv's care plan reflect person-centered care? Question 3. In what ways did Glenn and the program coordinator incorporate good diversity practices into the assessment and planning of Merv's care? And question 4. Jacinta mentions that things can come up for Dad from being in the war. How were Merv's needs and triggers understood and supported in the care planning process? So we'll now go through and have a look at how this case study aligns to the requirements and outcomes for Standard 3. So when we think about assessment and care planning, Glenn demonstrated a person-centered approach in all of his interactions with both Merv and Jacinta. He actively engages with Merv and Jacinta in developing the care plan, ensuring that Merv's interests, strengths, and preferences are central to the plan. Glenn learnt about Merv's background as a Vietnam veteran and a community leader, and then he acknowledged and valued Merv's life experiences. And this is really crucial for fostering a sense of dignity and respect. This approach also led to him being able to understand about Merv's potential triggers related to his experiences in the war. Following on from this, Glenn incorporates trauma-aware practices into the care plan, and this approach ensures that Merv's boundaries are respected and that the support workers are aware of situations that might cause him distress. I think it's really important to note that Glenn doesn't need Merv to relive his experiences in order to understand that something is important to him. He just has to respect his needs, and he does a great job of that. When we think about inclusive care, it's not reliant on knowing everything about a person or having them revisit past trauma. I think this case study also really showcased collaborative planning between Jacinta, Merv, and Glenn. Jacinta's insights into her father's needs and triggers provided valuable information that helps to tailor the care plan. Importantly, her involvement doesn't limit Merv's autonomy. Rather, it actually supports and complements Merv's ability to express his preferences and needs. When we think about the delivery of care and services, as we've mentioned, the care plan is tailored to Merv and notes he will retain control over his environment by agreeing what activities will be undertaken. Arranging for Merv to meet the support worker before starting the service also demonstrates culturally safe practices. And again, it connects in with that trauma-aware approach. This helps build trust and ensures that Merv feels comfortable and respected. The ability for Merv to choose his care worker emphasizes the importance of matching workers to the specific needs, preferences, and interests of older people, and the program coordinator's audit and subsequent adjustment to training protocols underscores the importance of having well-trained and informed staff. When we think about how we communicate for safety and quality, Glenn ensures that critical information about Merv's preferences and potential triggers is communicated to the support worker and the program coordinator. The care plan includes mechanisms for responding to changes in Merv's conditions or preferences, ensuring that the care remains adaptive and responsive to his needs. This approach aligns with the strengthened requirements for timely communication and risk management. The coordination between Glenn and the program coordinator and the support worker ensures that Merv receives well-planned and cohesive care. This integration is crucial for managing transitions and maintaining continuity. Glenn's approach also really demonstrates inclusion is built into his practice. He's adaptable, responsive, and lets Merv lead. And that's really what inclusive practice is about. As we've mentioned, he doesn't need to know every part of Merv's story to make sure that the service suits him. He listens and responds effectively. We're now going to look at another case study, and as with the one before, what I'd like you to do is to think about how this case study is aligning to the requirements and the outcomes for Standard 3, and think about what good practice you're seeing. Chen Wen has been a volunteer driver for 10 years. She's recently returned after being away for a few months visiting family in Malaysia. Fen is a client she is familiar with, having driven her to medical appointments and to social support groups over the last year. Today, Chen Wen notices that Fen seems different. She is distant and quiet, where she is normally bright-eyed and wanting to talk. Fen doesn't seem to remember who Chen Wen is, but when she reminds her that she's driven her before, Fen smiles and says, "Oh yes, I remember." After Chen Wen drops Fen off at her social support group, she provides feedback to Alex, the volunteer coordinator, about the changes she has noticed. Alex arranges to visit Fen and review her care plan and see how she is managing. He notices Fen appears different, and in the kitchen there's a lot of plates and cutlery on the benches and in the sink. He talks with Fen about how she is managing and suggests she could benefit from additional support. They agree that he will contact the assessment service. Once reassessed, Fen is provided with extra support and referred to a geriatrician. Alex has been reflecting on this experience and is concerned that other staff who have regular contact with Fen didn't notice the changes or weren't providing any feedback. He talks with the drivers and other team members about the need to provide regular feedback on clients, as it can help to identify when a client might be showing signs of decline. They create discussion topics and conversation starters for the drivers to use on each trip as a check-in on each client. They also create a short online form that each driver will complete on their phone at the end of the trip. The information is sent to the volunteer coordinator, who reviews the information and follows up with the drivers when any change in functionality, mood, or other significant things are noticed. So we'll now look at the questions and give you an opportunity to go through and reflect on the case study. Question 1. Identify the key actions taken by Chinwen and Alex that align with the outcomes of Standard 3. Question 2. How did Chinwen's observations and Alex's actions reflect a person-centered approach to Fen's care? Question 3. Reflect on your current practice for obtaining regular updates from workers about your clients. Are you implementing any approaches like what was introduced in this case study? What additional strategies could you use to ensure you receive timely and accurate information about clients from the workers who regularly see them? We'll now have a look at how this case study aligns to the outcomes and requirements of Standard 3. Chinwen's observation of Fen's behaviour, her potential memory loss, and then her proactive, immediate feedback to Alex are essential steps in identifying the need for a reassessment and additional support for Fen. This approach ensures that Fen's changing needs are promptly addressed and her overall well-being and safety are being taken into account. By revisiting Fen's care plan, Alex ensures that her current needs, goals, and preferences are accurately reflected. The reassessment and provision of extra support, including the referral to a geriatrician, demonstrates a commitment to delivering care that meets Fen's evolving needs. This approach ensures that Fen receives appropriate and timely interventions to enable her to optimize the quality of her life. When we think about effective communication, it's not just written or verbal, but actually the timeliness of that communication as well. And Chinwen's timely feedback to Alex about Fen's condition is a really critical component of this case study. This prompt communication allows for an immediate reassessment and an adjustment of Fen's care plan. I think it would be fair to say that regular feedback from staff and volunteers on Fen and how she may have been changing or showing some signs of decline was not being received. The people who had been working with Fen may not have known her well, so may not have seen the decline, or she may have had a different worker each week for when Chinwen was away. But then when Chinwen came back, she could see a clear difference between how Fen was before she went away and how she currently is. Chinwen's feedback not only supported Fen, but it led to a change across the organization. And I think this really connects into the idea of innovation and responsiveness. Alec took the decision to bring all the staff and volunteers together to discuss client feedback and to be really clear that the organization is willing to improve and that there is a need to constantly be providing feedback on clients. Bringing the staff and volunteers together really led to an innovative approach around how they could create discussion topics and conversation starters with clients that would also then help them to complete a short survey at the end of each visit or each interaction with a client. This not only builds rapport through really meaningful engagement, but it helps the organization to have timely and ongoing feedback and a data point around the health, well-being, and engagement of clients. So we've come to the end of this webinar, and I just wanted to provide a little bit of a summary around the strengthened standards. And they really are a pivotal step forward in enhancing the quality of care provided to all older Australians. The focus on diversity, wellness, trauma-aware and healing-informed practices really underscores the expectation for all aged care providers. It's absolutely essential that aged care providers create environments that reflect different cultural, linguistic, and religious backgrounds, as well as responding to the diverse gender identities and sexual orientations of all of our clients. The strengthened aged care quality standards are really attempting to dismantle the systemic barriers that exist for older people and shift to a more equitable and compassionate aged care system. So thank you for joining me for this webinar where we've looked at how diversity and wellness aligns to the strengthened aged care quality standards. If you haven't done so already, I really encourage you to go back and watch Standard 1 and Standard 2, and following this standard, look at Standard 4 and 5. If you're interested in accessing further support to progress your organisation's diversity and inclusion approach, please reach out to your local sector support and development team, or feel free to touch base with the sector support and development teams who have brought you this workshop, and their details are on the screen. If you're wanting to connect with me, the QR code on your screen will take you to my LinkedIn profile. Thanks again for joining us for these webinars, and I hope that they've been able to provide some further support and guidance around how the strengthened aged care quality standards need to be considered within a diversity and wellness lens.